May I call the Standing Finance Committee to order and to make a few opening remarks as it relates to the next step in this new process of oversight of the budget. The assurances given to this committee and the details in relation to proposed expenditure will form the basis of the work in the ensuing year of one of the new oversight committees established under the revised standing orders, that is the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee. Therefore, the oversight process does not end here with this Standing Finance Committee. At the Standing Finance Committee, ministers share with this committee their plans for the expenditure to be appropriated, and during the year, accounting officers will be asked by the new Public Administration and Appropriation Committee to give updates in relation to implementation or to account for their failure to implement. From time to time, the Public Administration and Appropriation Committee will report back to this House on these matters. The ultimate aim is to ensure proper administration of public finances. As we find our way in this new environment, the Chair continues to appreciate your amazing cooperation with this reform effort and commend all members for their contributions. Honourable members, I would like to apologize if, in trying to move the proceedings along yesterday, to ensure that the committee completed its work schedule, I may have overlooked some persons who were trying to make interventions. May I suggest that a member wishing to make an intervention should indicate by raising his or her hand when I call the relevant subhead. That way I will see you. Of course, that would not preclude a member from making an intervention if they did not indicate in the beginning. So I just wanted to let members know that this is not the end of the road. You know, there's an old saying, the end of the road does not, a bend in the road does not represent the end of the road. It is just a turn that you have to take to continue your journey. So I want members to know that after this exercise is over, the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee will be monitoring and tracking the spending and implementation of all proposals before this Honourable House, approved at the appropriate time when the budget is passed. We now go to Head 67, and we invite the accounting officers to join the Honourable Minister of Planning and Sustainable Development. Head 67, the Ministry of Planning and Sustainable Development, $307,219,830. Honourable Minister, I will now invite you, if you so desire, to make a brief opening statement for no more than 5 minutes, if you so desire, by giving this committee an overview of your priority areas, if you so desire. It's up to you.
Okay. Chair, I would like to take the opportunity to to give an overview of the work that we've been doing at the Ministry of Planning and Sustainable Development, and to locate that within the context of the budgetary allocations that have been made over time, and in particular with reference to this budget. As you know, the budgetary process is guided by a set of core priorities, although it's not limited by that, established by the medium-term framework. And those 5 priorities are crime, law and order, agriculture and food security, healthcare services and hospitals, economic growth, job creation, competitiveness and innovation, and poverty reduction and human development. And the priorities in allocation based on the entire appropriations process, both on development and the larger budget, is in a way influenced by this. At the present time, the ministry is working on the medium-term framework 2015 to 2021. And so far, we have added to these 5 priorities infrastructure development and governance. So in terms of this particular ministry, the Ministry of Planning and Sustainable Development, there are 3 particular areas on which we focus: economic growth and innovation, national spatial development, which is really town and country planning driving this process, and research and data management, which is driven by the Central Statistical Office. In economic growth and innovation, the Economic Development Board and the Council for Competitiveness and Innovation play an important role, and they support 2 key things: the process of diversification in the 7 areas that we have identified, and they support the 5 growth poles across the country as well. It is important to understand that the growth poles are not meant to be funded by government. They are meant to be facilitated as growth poles by government. And they also support the National Innovation Policy through the Idea to Innovation program. The National Spatial Development Town and Country Planning Initiative. As you know, Chair, we have laid before this Parliament the National Spatial Development Strategy, which in fact guides the whole development framework in terms of physical planning for the country. For research and data management, Cabinet has agreed to the recommendations of the consultants engaged with the Central Statistical Office for transformation of that particular entity into an independent entity. And we have also developed, on the basis of the census, a national population policy, which we will share with the population before long. In terms of the development plan, 15 to 21, we proceed with that so that there will be continuity in the governance process, and so that there will be continuation of policy in the governance process. And once a first draft of that plan is available, we will make it available to the population at large for general discussion and engagement.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, the question is that the sum of $307,219,830 for Head 67, the Ministry of Planning and Sustainable Development, stand part of the schedule. Honourable members, the sum of $307,219,830 for Head 67, the Ministry of Planning and Sustainable Development, is comprised of monies proposed for expenditure under the following subheads and items to be found in the draft estimates of recurrent expenditure and the draft estimates of development program. Subhead 1, personnel expenditure. Item 1, general administration. Item 3, technical corporation. Yes, I am.
Sorry to stop you, Mr. Speaker. I thought you were still opening up the innings.
Yeah.
I would like to place a couple of questions to the Honourable Minister who has joined us this morning on the 01001, which respect to salaries and cost of living allowance. Given the work program that the Minister has outlined, which we are fairly familiar with, could the Minister indicate what is the meaning of the decrease in the allocation for salaries and COLA with respect to the Ministry's staff? What is the intention here? Are we expecting to reduce staff, reduce effort? 0101, salaries and cost of living.
Page 357.
That's on page 357, Minister.
There's a decrease of 1.2 million there.
He's looking here at 16.
And this is with respect to vacant posts with incumbents.
No, but we actually have an increase.
No, there's an increase in the general personnel expenditure, but under salaries and COLA, 01, which is the first sub-item, specific to salaries and COLA, there's a $1.2 million reduction. What does that represent?
Yeah, Honourable Minister of Planning and Sustainable
This,
Development.
I mean, there is no reduction in staff that I'm aware of, and as far as I can see, the reduction may have to do with the fact that okay, yeah. As far as I can see, it may take into account vacant posts that may or may not be filled, and it may take into account SRC estimates for what might be needed. And as a result, in trying to be accurate, it may have led to a decrease in a request for a decrease.
Let me rephrase my inquiry, Mr. Chairman, because
Yeah.
in 2014, the ministry would have had a certain complement of staff, and you required $12.9 million to service that staff.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody took a decision to reduce that allocation, either deliberately or otherwise, to reduce it by 1.2 million, which means that you cannot then retain the same complement of staff that you utilized in 2014. So what I'm asking is, what was the basis for that decision? Is it that you do not expect to have that staff with you?
The year before. Yeah, the difference, I am advised by my Deputy Permanent Secretary, is that we overestimated what the SRC would estimate, and when we got the accurate figures, it led to a reduction or a decrease.
So you are saying that the revised estimates of 2014 is further revised to 11.648?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you very
Yes.
much.
And
So
yes, and I just want to give the Honourable Leader of the Opposition the commitment that there is no intention whatsoever for a reduction of staff at the ministry given the workload.
but then it brings me to another question. Why then was the revised estimate increased from 11 from 11.5 to 12.9 in the first place. When you did your revision, why was it revised upwards?
Because we weren't sure what the estimate was, what it would be. Yeah. So in order to protect yourself, to make sure that you are properly covered, you know, you give an estimate that might be slightly larger. But when you get the accurate figure, you reduce it.
Minister, you are the minister for the CSO, and that's why I'm pressing you on this matter. In these documents, the revised estimate normally says to the rest of us lesser mortals that you have in fact got a better handle than the appropriation estimates, because the budget documents themselves are estimates. Later down in the year, you, the operator, get a clearer view, and then you do a revised estimate, which over the years we take to mean that this is a much clearer picture. And when you did that, you upped your estimate by over $1 million. Now you brought it back down. And so I'm saying it's a little unclear to us. But the bottom line is that there's no intention to have any staff reduction.
There's no staff reduction, but my permanent secretary just indicated that in 2014 in particular, there were a number of arrears
Extraordinary
that
payments.
we needed to cover. Yeah.
Okay, that might be a bit more palatable.
Yeah, and this is rooted in the fact that the Ministry of Planning and Sustainable Development derived out of a situation in which you had planning, housing, and the environment, then economic and social restructuring and gender affairs, planning and the economy, and so on. So as these changes took place,
Understood.
they had to be.
Understood. May I ask you, Minister, under sub 23, what are salaries, direct charges? What does that mean?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister?
Yes, I understand these to mean the legal officers in the Ministry of Planning and Sustainable Development.
How many officers do you have? How many legal officers do you have?
I think we have on the establishment 8, if I'm not mistaken.
On the establishment, only 2, the others are contract.
Okay, we have 2 on the establishment and 6 are contract. I
2
don't
on
think
the
all the, yeah, 2 on
2
the
on the
establishment.
establishment and 6 on contract.
Yes, 1 is a senior state counsel.
And then, and do you still utilize external legal support for your litigation?
Sometimes.
So do you have any idea what your ministry might have spent on legal support in total? Because here you spent 900,000.
Yeah.
What was the overall picture, including external lawyers?
What happened, a lot of the work at the ministry is done in-house, and generally it would have to do with town and country planning related issues, although not limited to that. When there are matters other than that, then external counsel might be brought into the picture through the Office of the Attorney General. And they would then
So whenever you
address-
have the requirement for external counsel, that decision is made by the Attorney General's office.
Yes.
And when they make that decision, the budgetary consumption then, meaning the charges, are applied to that office or your office?
I think it's usually AG. Yeah.
To the AG's
it's
office?
AG's office.
Okay.
Yes.
And so once the AG directs legal help to your case,
Yes.
he takes over the matter?
Yes.
In terms of payment,
Well, we
choosing lawyers?
relate to the AG as the advisor of the ministry and the government. So the agents that he hires would be acting on his behalf.
And at that time, are any of your 8 lawyers involved as instructing
The
attorneys?
senior counsel in my office, in whom I have a lot of faith, is always involved.
I was going to make a comment, but I will keep it.
Okay, any further?
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
Under 01?
under 0, we're still under 01.
Right.
No, I think I given how we intend to best use our time today. I better leave you to go on to 03.
All right, so we'll go to item 3, technical Corporation. Item 4, Central Statistical Office.
before we get the-
All right,
before we
I think I recognize Member Faruqa Maloney.
Mr. Chair, I'll give way to the opposition leader, and then I'll ask my question.
And Member
Mr.
for Martin West.
Under 03,
Right.
the issue of vacant posts, which recurs throughout the document, not only in this ministry but elsewhere. What is the story with respect to vacant posts in your ministry? Where are these vacant posts? The ones represented under 08.
Well, I can give you a
00308.
Yeah.
Specifically, who are you relating to here?
these, for instance, it depends on the division. So, for instance, there are 4 vacant posts in legal, for instance.
In legal?
Yes.
Over and above this? Over and above
No,
the
we
8 that
have
you already
8,
have?
we have 8 positions in legal, 4 are filled. 3 positions of legal officer have been advertised, and the BOA, what's that?
Business operation.
The business operations, the administrative person, that is also vacant. In communications, we have 1 vacancy. In information technology, we have 2. In the National Transformation Unit, we have 12. In project planning and reconstruction, we have 2. These are the vacancies. So it's spread.
But, okay, I understand. Any intention to fill these positions? I see $500,000.
Yes.
That wouldn't fill all those positions you mentioned there. But let me just ask you, the question I want to ask is, how do you proceed to fill these vacancies?
Well, basically what happens is that these positions are advertised. The Public Service Commission is involved. Sometimes the GHRS, is that what it's called? They are involved in the process, and it usually follows the public service procedure for the filling of vacancies.
But given the long list of vacancies you just mentioned just for this one department, is it that you are being hamstrung by the fact that these vacancies exist within the establishment and there nobody is there? For example, let's take Town and Country.
Yes.
There are always complaints about the speed with which things are done. Is it that you have these vacancies and outside of your control, the bodies are not put there because these agencies are not sufficiently responsive?
We don't have sufficient staff in some areas that are critical. That is true. And I must say that the staff makes up for it really by higher levels of productivity. But, for instance, in the case of Town and Country Planning, if I'm not mistaken, advertisements were done last year. Applications were done. The process, I think, is either completed or near completion. And it is just that we were waiting for the new allocations in order to be able to hire these people.
But the other area, incidentally, I was Minister of Planning a few years ago.
Yeah.
And at that time, I had, in that ministry, 1 legal officer as one legal advisor. I noticed that you have pretty much a full-fledged legal department. Could you clarify that? Just what?
The increase in the legal department?
Yeah, because it has moved from 1 officer since you had the backup of the AG's office. But from the numbers you just mentioned,
Yeah.
which is 8, I think
It's 8 of which I have
so
4.
you have a full-fledged, you have an establishment of a full legal department.
Yes. Well, remember, you have both what you call officers on the public service payroll as well as contract officers. 2 of the officers in the legal department are on the public service payroll, the senior counsel and the other lawyer in the system who is the deputy. and we have hired lawyers on contracts. We have 8 contract positions. We have 2 additional hired, and we have 4, of which 3 have been advertised, but we have not filled. So basically, that is the position. I think, Honourable Member, you would agree with me that 1 lawyer for institution like planning and sustainable development is really inadequate.
I know that, and I agree.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that when you have a legal department, I would expect that the department would be more effective in reducing the outlay that you would incur going outside for legal help.
There are very few, during my 3 years or so in the ministry, there are very few instances in which we have gone outside our legal department. If I'm not mistaken, it may not be more than 2 occasions, yes. Yeah.
Chairman, move on.
Yeah. So, Member for Ruka Maloney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, based on the estimates that we have before us, in 2013, $15,625,072 was allocated to...
That's technical cooperation, right? Item 3? Or you do it CSO?
CSO.
Okay, good.
004.
Okay.
004, sub-item 01.
Right.
Salaries and cost of living allowance. And so what I want to find out from the minister, in 2014, 15 million was allocated, and this year as well, whether or not the allocation is adequate, and what accounted for the decrease in the allocation for 2014 and 2015. And that's to the Central Statistical Office.
The decrease you are speaking about, Honourable Member, is it a decrease of 625,000?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Huh?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember thinking back now what the thinking might have been, but we have found $15 million to be reasonable, and it is possible that it is an under-allocation, but we feel that it is adequate to meet the challenges that we have. And as you know, in the operations of a ministry, generally what happens is that when you find yourself with something that demands more financial support, you have a certain amount of flexibility and freedom to move funds along. But we feel 15 million will be adequate.
The Honourable Member for Chaguanas West.
Mr. Chairman, under 00408, how many vacant posts are there at the CSO?
At the CSO, just 1 second. We have
These are contract positions.
11 vacant posts in contract positions at the CSO.
For how long?
50 vacant.
What about on the establishment?
On the establishment, there are approximately 50 vacant posts.
50?
Yes, but that cannot be done without the Public Service Commission acting. And it's not for want of requests that they have not been filled.
So 50 plus 14, that is 64 posts vacant.
50 plus 11.
Plus 11.
61, yes.
You could tell me how long this has been going on?
This has been there. We've been trying with the CSO for some time to recruit staff. You have 2 problems. One is the Public Service Commission itself taking the action to proceed. It took me a year and a half to simply get them to act on the appointment of the acting director and the deputy director. The process can be extremely trying and very slow. And when the person is selected, or when the persons are selected, it took another 6 months before the process of actual appointment took place. So it took me 2 years to deal with that. And this matter is out of the control of the hands of any minister, as you know. And there's a limit to which you can engage the Public Service Commission in these matters. And the other part of the equation is that for some of the skills, you need highly technical people, and sometimes they are not available for the kind of really low salaries that are available in the Central Statistical Office.
Okay, so we will go now to item 5, Urban and Regional Planning Division. Item 8, Project Planning and Reconstruction. Subhead 02, Goods and Services. Item 1, General Administration. Member for Diego Martin West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to engage the minister under this head, under this subhead, but with respect to similar subheads that come a little later on the question of contract employment in the ministry. Because I see that we have moved from 2013 of $6 million to $9.7 million for contract employment. And that there's also another $3 million for short-term contract employment. And elsewhere, there are another few $1 million for contract employment. So I would like to ask the minister, who determines who is hired on contract in your ministry, and what is the procedure that is used to fill these contract positions?
We have a very transparent process.
If you may say so yourself.
No, we have a very transparent process that is driven by the permanent secretary in the ministry. And the normal process is to identify what are the posts we are going to advertise them. And at the point of advertisement, the permanent secretary takes a decision whether it will go through GHRS or some other form. And ultimately, it's the public service system that takes over, which is that committees are established, the process of interviews is done, and so on. And as you know, ultimately, 3 recommendations will come to you as a minister for signing on.
What is the role of the CPO in determining the emoluments?
The same role that she has always played, which is that she would give guidelines on the matter. Sometimes it is not possible to get people in contract positions under the kind of terms and conditions that the CPO advises. And then there's a negotiation process, but all of this lengthens the process by which you can hire somebody. And while you are negotiating this with the CPO, the person might well get another job and go somewhere else.
So you're saying that the process gets to a point where 3 names go to the minister?
Well,
and the minister selects one, or?
Well, generally they are ranked, you know. They are ranked. A minister would have to have an extraordinary reason for jumping the ranking.
So what goes to the minister is a ranking?
Yeah, it's a ranking
1, 2, 3.
of 1, 2, 3, yes.
But are there instances where the minister would have chosen number 2 or number 3, or does the minister generally accept what is recommended?
I think my permanent secretary would answer that I generally approve whatever is the first ranking first.
That's what we call that ministry.
I understand that an assistant is trying to guide you off the track. You stay on the track. Could you provide us before the end of the proceedings, or as you are able to, with a list of all the contract officers in your ministry?
The names of the people, you mean?
The posts?
The posts.
And names of persons in them, and their packages, right?
Okay.
And also a summary of the vacancies that exist.
A summary?
Like, for example, a summary of the posts that are vacant.
That are still vacant?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Contract and public service.
And the short-term employment, how the short-term employment, who qualifies for short-term employment in the
But
ministry?
generally, those are consultants. No.
Consultants, where we have a need and we have vacant positions that are filled. There's a process there too.
The permanent secretary has advised that generally, as we need a skill and we are not able or we need a skill for a time and we don't really need to hire someone full-time for it, that people like that would be brought in for specific purposes. So for instance, we had change management situation in town and country planning. We brought in a specialist for that using the same transparent procedure.
Under 28, sub 28, other contracted services, I see you've had a generous increase for 2014. What did that pay for? The allocation that you use in 2014 for other contracted services. What services are covered by that and what did we get for that?
The services covered has to do with janitorial, security.
Because I also observed that you've had a significant reduction for 2015. What's going on there?
There were small contracts, usually janitorial, security. I don't know what else.
You want to speak to the fact that HR is separate and apart in another building, they had major problems.
Yeah, we have an HR unit that is in a separate building. Where is it?
Henry Street.
It's on Henry Street.
HR
And we had a serious problem in which the place was infested with, I don't know if it was rats or whatever it is. We had to bring in rent to kill. We had to get some repairs done. We had to do various things. And ultimately, I think we moved them.
No, not yet.
Not yet. We didn't
find
move
a
them.
place.
And it really was a challenge. So we had to bring in contract these services in order to deal with a situation in which the employees were complaining, really.
$1 million in rats and cockroaches in one office?
No, I don't think you should say so. I said janitorial services. I said security. I said, rent to kill. I don't know if it was rent to kill or who it was. Yeah. But various things. What I want to do is to assure you that these are not contracted officers. These are contracted services. Right.
Well,
It's various
Mr. Chairman, I defer.
petty contracts.
Chair, with your permission, I will give the details, some of the details anyway. Cost to service 10 water coolers, petty contracts 8,000 a month, disposal of e-waste 200,000, Columbus Communication 12,000, rent to kill 9,000.
Small contracts.
$1 million, eh?
Yeah, but they add up,
All right, let us proceed. We go to item 2, Library Service Unit. Item 3, Technical Corporation. Item 4, Central Statistical Office. Which one, Mr. Gonas West?
I'm talking about 08. On that 00408, rent lease office accommodation.
All right. Yes, you want to raise your concern?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Mr. Minister, in 2013, the rent lease was $569,000 roughly. In 2015, it is $5 million. Can you tell me what caused this phenomenal increase and where these offices are, and if you have any proposed offices in mind?
Yeah, it's simply explained, Honourable Member. In 2013, the CSO would have had their offices in their building on Independence Square. Once that building was condemned, it means that you had to find office space for 800 officers of the Central Statistical Office. Office space has been found for some, but we have not yet found the office space for all 800 officers. Some of them operate from home. We have since, though, with the help of property management, secured a building for which negotiations are now ongoing. And if those negotiations are effectively concluded in about 4 months, we should be able to prepare and occupy the building in January. So the additional cost is really for the spread of CSO all over Port of Spain.
Sub 16, Mr. Chair, contract. What I said earlier on about contract employment, I would like to have that apply to this. Say it because it's a repeat. Contract and short-term contracts,
Yes.
right? We'd like to see those. And just to ask, the provision here under 16 for contract employment in the CSO, given your present state of flux, and it doesn't sound as if you would solve it in a matter of a month or two, are you proposing to increase the CSO staff under this contract employment arrangement?
Well, we need strong technical capability, and we will have to hire some people. And it is possible that some of those can be filled on the basis of vacancies that exist on the books, but it may be because of the demand for more reasonable salaries that we may have to give contracts to some of these officers. But we do need some of the technical competence. Also, with the addressing of some of the issues that we have to address which require fieldwork officers, I think that there would be need not just to retain some of the people who have the skills, the knowledge, the experience in fieldwork, but perhaps to train a few more so that we can be more effective as we try to get things on a more timely basis in the CSO.
You mentioned that negotiations are taking place with respect to a building. Could you tell us where this building is?
It's on Frederick Street, it's 47 Frederick Street.
As a member of the cabinet, you are aware that the government has been paying for one Alexandra Place now for years. Was any consideration being given for using that building?
We at one time tried to have that building assigned, but I think it has subsequently been assigned.
Are you assigned to whom?
The member for Opportunities?
The matter comes under the property division of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. I don't know if the member would want to answer now or raise that later in the proceedings.
No, I only raised it in the context of CSO looking for office, because what we're facing here as the taxpayer is that we have a bill up there paying millions for what I knew.
What I can say is that the member may be aware of the enormous difficulties we have had with that building because of a lack of proper approvals and so on before the former administration entered into arrangements to rent that building a few days prior to the general election in May 2010. Subsequent to that, we have completed about 95% of the outfitting now, and the Ministry of the People and Social Development is carded to go to that building to free up an important building adjacent to the Red House for the office for expanded facilities for the Director of Public Prosecutions. So that as it is now, the Ministry of the People and Social Development would, a decision has been taken to relocate. We are 95% complete, and I expect in a few days that ministry to move in there.
Okay. All right.
Chair.
Yes, I recognize Aruka Maloney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, sub-item 08, I was trying to get your attention earlier on this one. The minister indicated that approximately 800 workers were displaced, and he said that some of the workers are actually working from home. Could the minister indicate to us how many of those workers are working from home, and what, over a period of time, how long have they been working from home?
Did you get the question, Minister? How many workers are working from their homes, and what is the number involved?
Okay.
And over what period of time?
I think I think the number of 800 that I used was inaccurate. I was thinking of something else. That is in the Ministry of Planning, sorry. There are about 400 workers in the CSO, 350 to 400. And so I want to correct that for the record. Of the 350 to 400, I would say about 40%. About 40 or 45% would be working from home and operating what you might call in shared spaces so that, you know, they shift from time to time. What we've tried to do is to ensure that the field work is able to go on so that the process involved in collecting and assessing the data is not compromised. And secondly, we have made sure that the technical capability staff, the high technical requirements are not dislodged so that that work can be ongoing and properly monitored. And the staff, so to speak, in the middle, we've found a way of, I don't know, making the best out of a bad situation.
All right, we go to item 5, Urban and Regional Planning Division. Item 8, Project Planning and Reconstruction. Subhead 03, Minor Equipment Purchases. Item 1, General Administration. Item 2, Library Service Unit. Item 3, Technical Corporation. Item 4, Central Statistical Office. Item 5, Urban and Regional Planning Division. Item 8, Project Planning and Reconstruction. Subhead 04, Current Transfer and Subsidies. Item 1, Regional Bodies. Item 2, Commonwealth Bodies. Item 3, United Nations Organizations. Item 4, International Bodies. Item 6, Educational Institutions. Subhead 06, Current Transfers to Statutory Boards and Similar Bodies. Item 4, Statutory Bodies. We now go to Estimates of the Development Program. Subhead 09, Development Program. Item 1, Pre-Investment. I recognize the member for Diego Martin Northeast.
I wanted to make sure you didn't reach item 29 before I put up my head. I have a question on the IDF on page 181.
No, we haven't reached theirs yet, but
Sure, Mr. Speaker.
yes, well, I'll make sure that you are recognized when we reach here.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yes, the Honourable Member for Diego Martin West.
Right.
Make sure that you recognize me. I just would like to join you, Mr. Speaker, on the 09 and look down at 003, the seismic microzonation studies. In 2014, I see that we have appropriated and I presume used $2 million there approximately for that program. Could the minister give us a bit of information as to how that program has progressed and where we are with respect to the microzonation study?
We have almost completed Port of Spain, that's to say it's been finalized.
Who is doing this work?
This is the seismic research unit, and the person who is the lead researcher is a professor who has trained in seismic studies in Japan. As you know, earthquakes are. So they are leading that study. The Port of Spain is almost complete. They are doing the major cities first, so San Fernando, Chaguanas, Sarima, etc., the main urban centers. And then they will move to 6 others. There are 10 areas that have been identified. And the entire study is 10 years long. We have gone from 2011 now So 3 years have been completed. So I would say progress is reasonable, because for the others, like Chaguanas, San Fernando, Arima, they would have made progress as well, although they're not close to the end yet.
Are we waiting for a report at the end of the program? Or
No,
we're going to get sectional.
We'll have interim reports on each location.
Right. So
Yes.
as the location is completed,
Yes,
you will get
we'll
that.
share that with the population.
How is that feeding into the National Building Code work?
It is essential to that. And that's why we started with Port of Spain, which is your main urban center, and where you are likely to have the tallest buildings. So one of the things, for instance, they found with the microzonation study, which may seem obvious now, but it was important to have the documentation, is that the place where a building is safest might be East Port of Spain, and the place where a building is most vulnerable would be West Port of Spain.
No.
But you now have the data to tell you that, and it has implications, of course, for development. And the microzonation studies are going to feed into the building codes.
When you say Port of Spain, is that confined to the city limits, or is it
No.
Port of Spain and the environs?
Port of Spain and the environment. So it would take in Westmoreland as far, and it would take in like Mova.
Okay.
I recognize the member for point 14.
Thank you very much. With regard to economic infrastructure 004 growth poles development, and with regard to, in particular, this.
No, we
Have I
haven't
moved ahead?
reached. No, we haven't reached yet.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. I recognize the member for Laventille West.
Chair, we are on page 176.
No, we on the item subhead 09, development program. So let's move on. Item 1, pre-investment. Item 3, economic infrastructure. I recognize point 14.
Thank you. If there's no one else before me, with regard to the growth poles development, I noticed there's an increase here, but I speak to the Southwest Peninsula in particular because I don't know that any work has been done on the development of the Southwest Peninsula, except for a meeting which was held very late in these 5 years in your term. And so this only took place a few months ago. Where have you reached with that? And why has Southwest appeared to have been sidelined as well? And I asked this in conjunction with the sustainable and emerging cities. How does that fit into the same growth pole development project? And which of these emerging cities as well?
Yeah, I think a lot, Chair, has to do with a misunderstanding of the growth pole concept and the role of government in it. You have a situation in Trinidad and Tobago in which you have a two-tiered economy because of petroleum. You also have a situation in which Dutch disease is a factor because of the cyclical nature of the oil economy. And you also have a challenge of Trinidad and Tobago being what you call a high-income country, and therefore you are caught in what is known as the middle-income country trap. So the question is, how do you make diversification possible in that context? That is why 7 sectors have been selected, but 5 geographical poles have also been selected as well, to spread the development possibilities. What it means is that government identifies the growth pole area in the context of a national development plan. It then puts the infrastructure in, whether that be road or drainage or water or whatever infrastructure is necessary. It might be schools, it might be higher educational institution. Government spends on those things. And it then works with one ministry with the other. So the Ministry of Industry then establishes economic zones for which it then creates the conditions for the private sector to invest. In addition, what you do is that you you basically, we have done studies on all of these, including the Southwest, in which you know what are the anchor industries in an economic zone or in a growth pool, and what are the cluster possibilities of industries there. And with government, the ministry is working together with the private sector, both existing and coming in to invest. The growth pools are then triggered in terms of growth possibilities in the economy. So government does not have to allocate large sums of money for the growth pools, but you will see money allocated for the economic zone, because that is where you'd have to put infrastructure for the investment. The growth pool thing is something that is facilitated. That's why the consultations are so important, to bring people together, to understand what is happening, what is possible, what is desirable, and how this can be achieved through collaboration.
I recognize South, then the leader of the opposition, and member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, well, Mr. Chairman, well, I'm even more confused over the response given to my colleague from Point Fortin. Now, back in 2011, the then Minister of Finance, member for Tunapuna, when he came to this House in his budget presentation, he was very clear. He said what the government was doing was open up new economic spaces to facilitate sustainable development and growth. He identified 5 growth poles. My interest is in the East Port of Spain growth pole. I am asking the question because this has been in the budget from year to year to year. And then with this last budget here on the 8th of September, where the minister said that technical work is still going on in the growth poles. He didn't say which one, growth poles, all 5. My question to you this morning is, sir, what is happening with the East Port of Spain growth pole? What is going on there? What is the technical work? Because the minister did not answer. That's the Minister of Finance, not you. Did not answer the question when I did my budget presentation. I want to find out what infrastructure was done in East Port of Spain.
All right.
What is happening?
I think your question is, Honourable Minister.
In East Port of Spain, as you know, there are several agencies that are responsible for different things. Under the East Port of Spain Development Company, between 2011 and 2014, 46 projects, about 37 projects have been completed completely, and there are 46 projects that will have been completed by 2015. There are a number of collaborative engagement projects involving the East Port of Spain Development Company, as well as the Port of Spain City Council. There are projects under the Sustainable Cities dimension. It's not a project, it's a program of projects. So the Women's City Initiative is under the Ministry of Gender. The initiative having to do with flood control and management is under the Ministry of Environment. It's being funded by the IDB. The linear park is something that requires completion of some of the flood work before you can begin along the East Dry River. The project at the top with the cannon, what is it, Fort Picton, they have just, they did the feasibility study. They have now tendered for the project, and I think that project is about to be given out and started. The idea behind Fort Picton is that it would begin the process of restoration of some of the heritage sites. Development is a difficult process in a situation in which you are working with the communities that exist and the legacy that you have inherited, and you are not breaking down, demolishing in order to build anew. And therefore, it is very painstaking in trying to get these projects connected to one another and getting so many institutions to collaborate. So rest assured that the Sustainable Cities project is on. It is required. Part of the requirement is private sector investment. And I want to say to you that for the East Port of Spain area, there are 2 or 3 very important private sector players in the country that are prepared to invest in that particular area, notwithstanding the challenges.
Just one question. Minister, are you aware that not one single cent, we found out here yesterday, was allocated to East Port of Spain Development Company in the budget?
Yes, I don't want to speak for the Honourable Minister of Finance. We detected that very early, and I wrote a letter to the Honourable Minister of Finance. I know it came up here in the committee. I'm sure he's going to address it. I think it was an oversight, quite frankly.
I think, Member for Bataria Sanwan, you want to make a point in connection with the growth poll?
Yeah, I just want to ask something to the minister.
Yes.
Since I'm hearing out about the growth polls and where the growth polls are going to be, I have been in this parliament since 1995. And since 2001, I have been hearing the then PNM government, through Member for San Fernando East, speaking about the East Port of Spain growth polls, and in fact, I didn't hear much about growth polls. Can the minister indicate what was done prior to 2010, between 2001 and 2010, if there were any growth polls? No, I have my time here now. I have my time. I want my question answered. And if at all,
please, no.
And if at all,
please,
Mr. Chairman, have they done anything in the growth polls of the South? Because they did nothing.
Members.
And now they are questioning the minister about growth polls.
Members.
They never had no growth polls. When they were there, they had nobody. Who questioned? This is not question time.
It's a committee.
Members, listen, this is not a market. Please, this is not a market. No, this is a standing member for Diego Martin Northeast and Bataria San Juan. Wait, Liz, cool. This is a meeting of the Standing Finance Committee, and any member is entitled to raise questions. It is not only confined to the opposition, it is confined to all members who make up the Standing Finance Committee. So it is unfair to say that a member of the government can't ask a question. They can ask a question.
Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
What year, what period can the questions be directed to?
I could, you all went back to 2010. Diego Martin Ortiz, you went back to 2010. You went down, No. You all are going back, and we can go back. I want to find out what was the growth polls that you all did. Nothing.
All right, okay. Order, please. Member for Port of Spain South, please. Bataria. Listen, you can make reference to 2010, but he's correct. We are not going back. What we have here is not going back, but you can make a reference.
Could I ask a question then?
Yes.
From January 2010 to May 2010, which is 2010, right? What growth polls were developed by the Member of Parliament for Point Fortin, Point Fortin South, and Diego Martin? That is 2010. Okay. Mr. Chairman, that is 2010.
No.
January 2010 to May 2010, what was done by that government?
All right, listen.
Nothing.
Listen.
That is 2010.
Listen.
But it is 2010.
Member for Port of Spain South, please.
I could go back to 2010, January 2010
I don't think that I'll allow Dr. Tewarie to go there. Please. Let us not go there, please. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, if this goes on, this exercise would be defeated.
Defeated?
Why?
When I ask questions, defeated?
Member for Bataria San Juan.
No problem.
Yeah, but I'm saying just order here, okay? You have spoken? No, you have spoken. Just cool it. Let the member for the government.
Could I ask, Mr. Chairman, where are we in the proceedings? Because I would like to return to the proceedings of the Finance Committee.
Yes. We are under item 3, economic infrastructure.
Mr. Chairman, I crave your indulgence If you're on item 3, right? That's, anyway, just to make it clear, I crave your indulgence on page 176. So just put a question to the minister, a very simple question. 176001, the feasibility study for San Fernando waterfront. Where are we with that? And how I've heard that the project is progressing, but I'm seeing provision here in 2014 for the feasibility study. Has that study been completed, and what do we have in hand?
This study has now been completed. About 5 or 6, I don't recall exactly, consultations have been held leading to its completion. It was revised on each occasion that there was a consultation. And where we are now is that in the recommendations of the study, there are projects that can be initiated immediately and completed. There are medium-term projects and there are long-term projects. But the projects, once more, in keeping with the philosophy of this government, is not a waterfront development in which government is the sole investor. It is a project in which there is public-private participation.
So does that mean that we have in hand now, or are about to have,
yes, we have
an approved master plan which would carry the requisite approvals so the private sector could invest in a development?
We don't have the approvals yet.
How soon do you expect to have this master plan approval?
Well, as I said, the study is completed, and I did promise that I'd go back for one final presentation in consultation mode with the completed study, and that is going to be done very soon.
But the final outturn of all this exercise would be an approved development plan.
Yes,
which
for
would
San
be
Fernando.
known to one and all.
Yes.
And based on that approved plan, investment would take place in what's in effect a national project.
Yes.
Do you have any idea as to what public sector project will take place within there, over and above any private sector interest?
The public sector projects would have to be, first of all, the realignment of public establishments in the San Fernando area. So, for instance, you might have to move where the market is or where the bus is, things like that. You'd probably have infrastructure investment. There, you would have to deal with relocation of the fishermen or satisfying their needs in some form. You'd have to deal with the issue of squatting, which you'd have to regularize or solve in some form. These would be issues that the state would have to address.
Do you have a cited report? I want to ask you, does it include reclamation?
The reclamation has been suggested as one option, yes. Okay.
Chairman,
To the west, and then we'll come back to
I want to go back to a point I was making before.
infrastructure.
Yes.
Yeah, Lavender West.
Chair, 2 questions. With respect to the same item the opposition leader was speaking about, we saw where the figures moved from 1 million to 2.7 million. Can the minister indicate what would have caused that increase or overrun? That's the first question. Second question would be, with respect to 003, 004 growth poles development, the minister would have made mention about East Sportsman Development Company and having completed some 37 or so contracts or projects. Can the minister indicate or send a listing of those projects to us, the completed ones, in addition to those that are expected to be done within the year ahead?
I can identify all the projects right here, if you wish. I have a list of all the projects.
We'll prefer a list. We'll prefer a list.
No, well,
you don't want the public to know?
No. I think I like No, wait. If the member can answer the question, it will be accepted.
I'm eager to hear it.
Because, and of course, the member can also pass on a hard copy.
I can pass on.
But at least, but remember, you have 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes.
The East Port of Spain.
The first question,
which is?
with respect to moving from 1 million to 2.7 million.
Oh, that was the, oh, you mean for the feasibility?
Yeah.
Member for Coover South, could we cool it behind here?
What happened on that occasion is that we had...
Yes, well, you and Diego Martin Central cool it. Okay? Yes, well, it doesn't matter. I'm hearing your voice.
$1 million had been allocated for the feasibility study. And when the bids came in, 1 million could not satisfy it. So the Central Tenders Board basically said to us that we had to open up. We had to go through the process again. And based on what we saw, I mean, obviously that you needed more money, which is where the increase was given.
Yes. Could you go on to the part 2 now?
The part 2
with
would
the
be
projects.
The projects.
You have 5 minutes.
Well, I'd like to start with the ones that are finished. These are. Restoration of Fort Picton. Tenders were evaluated and preferred bidder selected. Recommendation of the evaluation committee was considered and approved by East Port of Spain. So that project will go. Well, you see,
Listen, you can't be interrupting the member.
Listen,
You ask a question, let him answer.
Yes, but
after he answers, then
we ask for completed projects.
Yes, but allow the minister to respond.
Well,
you interrupted him.
I'm trying to find it. I'm sorry. This is.
All right. Well, whilst you're looking for that,
He found it.
you found it? No. Hold on, Member Sanchez. I know you're anxious to raise your question. Hold on.
All right. Sealots East Play Park completed.
Oh, yes.
Okay, that is with the help of the National Commission for Self-Help, so they work together. Pit latrine eradication program, 100% completed. 40 pit latrines replaced with wet core containing septic tank, etc. This is throughout East Port of Spain. Pit latrine eradication program phase 2. We are doing 20 in Beetham Gardens, 15 in Sealots, and 20 in East Gonzales. Those are the areas right now. Davis Street, steps and drains, completed. Concrete stairs, walkways, slipper and stormwater drains. Parsley Street, Harlem box drains, completed 100%. St. Martin Welfare Association, completed 100%. Existing facilities including ceiling painting, air condition, refurbish and welding shop. Rocket Park, Beetham Phase 4, construction of reinforced drain, crossing and pave lay-by, installation of handrails, landscaping and concrete tables and benches, 100% completed. Basilaw Street Youth Facility, 100% completed. This includes a double-story, two-story structure. A new roof was replaced, window furnishing. There's a computer center in there as well. Beetham Gardens Community Clinic, 100% completed refurbishment of existing private building, construction of bandstand and change rooms. Beetham Garden Phase 1 to 5, cleaning streets and drains, 100% 90% completed. Restoration of Fort Picton, I mentioned that before. Desperados 2 tender documents had to be revised. George Street and environs, designs in progress for facility. East Port of Spain Heritage Walk, discussions have been held with the Ministry of National Security. Blue Diamonds Pan Theatre upgrade, contract signed. Contractor is expected to take possession of site during week of September 22nd.
All right, Honourable Minister, I think that you can circulate the rest. I think your 5 minutes is up. Can circulate. I now recognize Member for St. Joseph, and with the last question on this one. Oh, yes, same one on infrastructure. So you go first, and then St. Joseph will go after.
Thank you, Minister. You made good conversation on the growth poles development. In particular, I was concerned about the Southwest growth pole.
Yeah.
But I want to make the point that we have a highway to Point Fortin that is looks like it will be completed in a year or two. But at the same time, you have abandoned the development of the E-Tech Park. In other words, so there's no, and you speak to diversification, but you are now you have no provision for the development of the industrial site.
No.
That has been overtaken by the hospital. Further, the UTT campus, which was meant to be to include COSTAT and MIC and so on, which is all geared for further development, there's been no provision for that as well. So I can't understand having a highway and not going along with the other developmental projects as well.
The other developmental projects are very much in train. You have in Trinidad and Tobago today in the year 2014, the very happy situation in which a community can ask for both a hospital and an industrial park at the same time and a highway and get it.
The industrial park is not coming. As far as I'm concerned, the hospital is being placed on the same site.
I will clarify for you. There was a piece of property that had been designated for the industrial park. There is also a demand in Point Fortin for a hospital. The question is, where would have been the best place to put the hospital? It was decided because infrastructure had been put down on the industrial park, yes, that it would make sense to locate the hospital there. The hospital, however, will not take the entire piece of property under its charge, given the hospital that is being built. And I think what is happening now is that, if I'm not correct, if I'm correct, there is discussion and negotiation between the Ministry of Housing and the Ministry of Trade to figure out how the people of Point Fortin might get both. So
on the same
it's
site?
not that. It's possible on the same site.
Will Town and Country Planning allow the hospital to be placed next to the industrial site?
I don't know. They will have to look at it. They'll have to look at it. They'll have to look at it. They'll have to look at it.
Medical services.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. And just I had asked you further about 005. Are there any identified emerging cities?
No, the emerging city of Port-of-Spain is a nomenclature that we use for
fine.
the sustainable city of Port-of-Spain. Sorry.
Yes, I'm okay with that.
Is okay with that?
Yeah.
And the emerging city is really Chaguanas, and we see the potential as well for Arima. Okay.
Yes, I recognize Member for St. Joseph.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I have about 2 or 3 short questions. Would the Minister prefer I ask all or one by one?
No,
okay?
you
all
answer all 3.
Under Support Industrial Development Initiative 001, Invaders Bay Infrastructure Development. 2013, there was an allocation actually spent of $1.479 million. 2040, estimate nothing. 2014, revised estimate nothing. 2050, 15 estimate nothing. What is the fate of that Invaders Bay infrastructure development? That's question 1.
Right.
Question 2, the Honourable Minister would remember one of his previous statements when he said that the East Port of Spain development project was inextricably linked to the Invaders Bay project in the Senate. If it is now, what is the fate of the Invaders Bay project? Is it now delinked from the East Port of Spain growth pool? That is one question. Two questions. Other question.
No, the third one.
Third one, sorry. The growth pool for the North Coast, which was predicated on a tunnel from Tunapuna to Maracas. What is the fate of that North Coast growth pole development project predicated on a tunnel from Tunapuna to Maracas? Is that growth pole still on the cards? Is the tunnel still on the cards? That's the third question.
You're right. Okay, three questions. Minister of Planning and Sustainable Development.
Chair, I will try to answer the honourable member, but first I must dislodge the load from the questions. So I will try to answer the questions. On the question of the North Coast, a study has been done on the North Coast. The North Coast area has only 3,000 people living in it, but a number of natural assets, including green forests and, of course, beaches that we know very well. And the people in those areas, you have very low skills in those areas, but skills directed towards things like agriculture, fishing, etc. And a development strategy is being pursued that would take into account the 3,000 people living there, the reality that you need to populate the population to make development happen, and therefore there must be attractors. And again, it's a strategy involving public as well as private sector funding, or if you like, public sector spending as well as private sector investment. The member is also, the growth pole concept seems to create a lot of problems. East Port of Spain has its own jurisdictional area. The growth pole concept has to do with a geographical zone that is targeted for growth, and it may or may not involve overlapping things in it. So that is the situation in Port of Spain, and the East Port of Spain set of projects is under the jurisdiction of East Port of Spain. I want to make one thing clear in relation to East Port of Spain. Although there was that issue of the operational costs being left out, there is in fact a $30 million allocation in the IDF for the East Port of Spain Development Company, and I think another 4 million, another 5 million for soft projects, that is to say, human support projects in the area. Okay, I just want to clarify that. On the Invaders Bay project, what this reveals really is that despite all the charges that have been made about Invaders Bay, there is very negligible government spending in Invaders Bay. There is very little government expenditure, state expenditure of public funds in Invaders Bay. And what has happened with Invaders Bay now, as we have proceeded to negotiate on the basis of cabinet decisions with the people who have been selected, is that the project has been passed over to UDICOT now that the land allocation has been made possible by the president of the country, which is what prevented the situation from happening before.
Can I just ask?
I want you to, Shogun, you wanted to raise another question?
No, just a clarification, because part of my question was, is the North Coast growth pole still predicated on the tunnel from Tunapuna to Maracas? That part was not answered.
I don't think it ever was.
All right, well, let's move on. Shogunas West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Minister, who you said just now that Shogunas is an emerging city?
Yes.
Can you give me a status report since I don't know about that?
Well, Chaguanas, based on the census, is an area in which there has been an 11%, based on 2011 census, there's an 11% growth in the population of that area. I think you know that a lot of government infrastructure spending has been on things like educational institutions, etc., in that part of the country because of decentralization. And also, I think you also know that there are a number of private sector housing developments in that area, as well as a number of state housing development projects in that area. Because of all of that, that part of the area, which has always been a retail and commercial center, is emerging really as a city and is worthy of city status. So what we are seeking to do is working with collaborators across the board, the council, the borough council in Chaguanas, and the Ministry of Local Government, Ministry of Transport, local private sector chambers in the area, the downtown merchants in Chaguanas, the community at large through consultation, the vendors in the area who play an important entrepreneurial role in the area. We are trying to work together to see how we might cooperate and collaborate to make that possible.
All right, let's move on. And members, you'll allow me to move on. I know that I have to go on to infrastructure. Item 4, social infrastructure. Item 5, multi-sectorial and other. And we go to infrastructure development fund.
Item 4.
I recognize the member for...
Item 4, Mr. Chair, you moved on.
You're what?
Item 4.
Yeah, quickly, we have to move on, eh?
Mr. Chair, under sub-item 045, we are told that the CSO they are physically transitioning to new facilities. Could you tell us exactly where those facilities are?
No, but he answered that question already. Let's go on to infrastructure development fund.
No,
I recognize the member for the Gomatin Northeast. You must pay attention to what is taking place. No, we are moving ahead. Member for the Gomatin Northeast,
Mr. Chair,
please.
I have other questions under this item.
Oh, you have other questions. Good, continue.
Right, Mr. Chair, I would like to find out when exactly those staff members are going to be accommodated, because the member did indicate that there are 157, 45% of the 350 members or staff members are home. And I'm not sure if the member where these people just go and they sign and go back home. They have been on an extended vacation. So we'd like to know exactly when will they be accommodated.
No, the minister answered that. Listen, you have any other further questions? If not, I recognize the member for the Gomatin Northeast.
Mr. Chair, is the time frame I'm talking about?
No, the minister has answered that. He said that there's a building on somewhere in Frederick Street, and he's hoping that by January that it will be outfitted and they will accommodate it 300 to 400 members. He said that. So to go back through that is not making sense. We are wasting time. I now recognize the member for the Gomatin Northeast.
Page.
Member for the Gomatin Northeast, could we have silence and allow the member to speak? Member for the Gomatin Northeast, please.
Noise over there.
Yes, I recognize that myself.
Page 180. Would you all stop it?
Yeah, members, could we have silence and allow the member to speak?
Page 181.
181.
005.
005.
029. Boardwalk.
Boardwalk.
When I add up the expenditure from 2013, I don't know what happened in 2012. You get $58 million. 10 million in 2013, 35 million in 2014, and 13 million projected for 2015 for this boardwalk project. And it says phase 2. What is the cost of this boardwalk project, phase 1 and phase 2, expected to be at the end of it all?
Minister?
Yeah, it's almost complete now, Mr. Chairman, Honourable Member for St. Anne's West.
The Gomatin Northeast.
Sorry, the Gomatin Northeast.
Just the cost, please.
Where's the total?
Total cost of this boardwalk project, phase 1 and phase 2.
Phase 1 was another.
All together.
No, this is
I
totally
can
phase
provide that for you. I don't remember what.
All right, do you have any further questions
Yes, of
before I go to the member for the Gomartin West?
It seems to me it's at least 100 million.
Yes,
No,
he will
it's not.
He will provide the answer to us.
Yes, I have another question on the
Yes,
IDF now.
yes, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman,
IDF
Mr.
with
Chairman.
respect to
Yes, no, the member is on the floor, please.
IDF with respect to the Ministry of Planning. I notice an allocation on page 293, 67001, economic infrastructure. There was $50 million allocated to the Invaders Bay project. What was that for?
The
infrastructure.
Honourable Minister?
what we had hoped was that the contracts, etc., with the private sector would have been completed, and that we would have provided to UDCOT this basic infrastructure money for them to begin the infrastructure responsibilities that were the responsibilities of the state. The private sector have their own responsibilities under the contract. And this was the money allocated for that.
All right, you're saying this 50 million was for infrastructure.
It was not spent.
I realize it was not
Yes.
spent. But the 50 million was allocated for infrastructure that was the responsibility of the state.
Yes.
But you just, in answer to a question from St. Joseph, said the expenditure by the state is almost zero?
But if the money was not spent, and we did not spend any besides the money that was not spent, then the limit of expenditure would have to be extremely low by the state.
Going forward, you said the expenditure would be very small.
Going forward, I expect that there would be some state expenditure for basic infrastructure work, such as water,
All right, so,
lights, etc.
right, so there will be expenditure along the line of this 50
Yes,
million,
yes.
perhaps on an annual basis.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
I think I recognize the member for Batara San Juan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted, on that note, whether the minister could tell us what was the cost of the MV Sue, and whether
No,
No. I have a follow-up.
out of order.
No. I have a
Out of order. Out of order. No. Member, it is irrelevant. I rule you out of order. I recognize the member for the Gomartin West. Could we conduct ourselves properly in this meeting? No, that is out of order, man. Yeah, I recognize the member for the Gomartin West. I recognize the member for the Gomartin West. Please, and please, let us stop the crosstalk, please. The member for, please.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
it is clear that the intention of some of my colleagues is to disrupt this proceeding.
Please.
Mr. Chairman, I'm talking to you. Could I be
Yes.
protected from the rest of my colleagues, please?
Yes.
I'm under 005 001,
What page?
The transact.
page 181,
181.
001. I would want to deal with a few items here, so if you can bear with me, Mr. Chairman.
Right.
The allocations to Tewarie, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
Honourable Minister, what exactly are we getting for that with respect to that outlay? How is that going?
Okay. Actually, Tewarie is one of those institutions that I would say has been undervalued in terms of its potential for contribution. And I can say right now, based on the services that Tewarie provides traditionally, that has provided traditionally, and where their business has grown, Tewarie is now paying its way, I want to say that. So it is now covering its cost. It is generating enough income for that.
Why
But where this money goes, as you can see, it is for infrastructure and the purchase of equipment. So for instance, I can tell you one of the things that they've been able to purchase recently has been a 3D equivalent of a Xerox machine in which you draw the material that you want.
Hologram.
Right, a hologram. And you get a prototype. So what it means is that a person doesn't have to spend the time making the prototype. This is also linked to a number of things. It is linked to a collaborative project involved with the World Bank that is Caribbean-wide in scope to find entrepreneurial initiatives that are also climate change solutions. It is linked to a collaboration with Microsoft for the establishment of the 111th Microsoft Innovation Center in the world in Trinidad and Tobago in a few weeks' time. It is linked to the Enterprise Development Center, which is an incubator for the projects that come out of the Idea to Innovation program, where those ideas are nurtured over the period of a year to become businesses with new entrepreneurial initiatives in the country. It is also has to do with the creation of an app center in which they are bringing people with IT knowledge to develop software applications, which is a very important part of the new development thrust in ICT in the country. It is those kinds of things. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to go to 018, surveillance of the Chagaramas Peninsula. 018 under
Yes.
005.
Yes.
Now, we did appropriate in 2013 $300,000 for this assignment. I now see an appropriation was made for $1 million in 2014, and we spent $5 million. Could the minister explain how we could have had an appropriation for $1 million and we spent $5 million on surveillance of Chagaramas Peninsula? Could you explain that, please?
Because it's just a CDA, the program specifically,
We're going
for islands.
allocate.
So it is,
No, but how you go from 1 to 5?
What is that?
From what?
The increase in allocation would have been by environment. And you remember when you're talking about the Chagaramas Peninsula, you're talking about the peninsula itself and 5 islands. And we took a very early decision that if you were going to open up Chagaramas to the country, because that is what it has become. It's a place where if you live in, Cedros, for instance, you might want to come to Chagaramas and spend a day with your family. If we took a decision to open up the peninsula like that, security was perhaps the most important thing. So the early decision was to make sure that we had surveillance equipment all over the peninsula and on the islands, and more than that, to expand the police force, the police fleet, and the police mobility capability within Chagaramas. So that was an early decision.
So this is not just surveillance, it's surveillance and security?
And security.
Okay, understood. Okay. Could I go to 024? Strategic plan for Chagaramas development. What number plan is that? Is number 9, 10, 12, or 15?
Yeah, I don't know. But
because
I take your point.
I'm coming to this. I seem to recall in my short tenure around public life that there are a number of Chagaramas development plans. Why is there a need for another strategic plan for Chagaramas?
Okay, for the same reason that we had to do a plan for the waterfront project, for which there had been, I think, 11 plans before, which is that as time moves on, as communities develop different notions of what they want for development, what happens is that they require consultation and inclusion all over again in the process. So what we did in San Fernando was we took the 11 plans, and the first draft of the plan, which has now become the master plan, was an inclusion of a number of items from the 11 plans, plus new things that we would suggest that could fit together. And that was the beginning of the consultation process. In Chagaramas, what they have done as well is to go back to the old plans, but with the thinking of how do you make Chagaramas a sustainable peninsula in which the environment considerations are dominant, and in which you basically create a kind of green park for family enjoyment, and with ancillary and support entertainment facilities that could include men, women, and children, what kind of plan would you need? And I think that is what is going on now. It should be finished in about 4 months.
Mr. Chairman, I support all that, Mr. Minister, Mr. Chairman, through you. Everything that you said cannot be challenged, but given the fact that there have been a number of comprehensive plans for Chagaramas, and now that we are returning to the issue of a plan for Chagaramas, do you really feel that $12 million is a reasonable figure?
Is it 12?
We spent 2.3 million on that same plan, and this is a plan that comes after and must, by necessity, involve review of the previous plans.
Yes.
We have had a number of comprehensive plans for Chagaramas. There are only so many ways you can turn mud into bricks. And therefore, when you assign your officers or whoever contractor you assign to give you a new plan, even though it's 2013, the groundwork that the previous plans will have incorporated must be somewhere useful.
Must have.
So in 2013, yes, we spent $2.3 million on that plan. Then we spent another, we estimated 1 million more. But we end up spending $7.5 million in 2014.
Yes.
How do we justify spending $7.5 million on a plan which is based on a series of other plans where a lot of previous work could have been done, where we had estimated 1 million, we spent $7.5 million, and we are now appropriating another 2 million, which in total would be $12 million on a plan which would be the last of a series of plans.
No, but this is what you call a Chagarama's master plan, and it's going to have a...
All the others were master plans?
Yeah, but there were problems with the plans. Remember, 10 years ago, people were not thinking about sustainable development, you know. The environment was not as dominant a concern as it is now.
Minister, 10 years ago, 10 years ago, I might have been the Minister of Planning.
Yes.
People were thinking about sustainable development, because I do know that there are plans that are comprehensive for Chagaramas. And to the extent that any new plan is required, we are saying here that we would have spent between 2013 and 2015 $12 million. So I want to ask you, could we get a breakdown of how this money was spent, who was paid, and what they were paid for, and what they produced?
Yeah, I can tell you, and the consultative people involved in this are what, Halcro?
It's, yes.
Yes.
Honourable Minister.
Yeah, all the information can be transparently given.
You don't have to give it to me now.
I'm
asking for a breakdown, a complete breakdown.
First of all, the plan is done in phases, okay? So initially what you do is, I forget what you call it. What do you call those plans where you would have had an initial draft of a plan which says that, look, given 15,000 acres of land, so and so and so, this is what. And that would be the basis. Then you go into detail about every cove, every nook, every cranny, which is what is being done now. This is a 15-year master plan. And at the end of the day, it will basically say, over a 15-year period, these are the things that you can do and the options you can take for development.
All right, Honourable Minister, could you submit?
Yes, yes.
All right, I think that I want to move on now.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to be clear as to what I'm asking for and what I'm to expect, which is a breakdown of how this 12 million, how the 9 million was spent, who was paid and for what and what did they produce, and of course you have another 2 million to come.
I recognize the Gumate notice.
Last question on
and these are the last.
Yeah, one last question on 005.
After that we go moving on.
031.
Yes.
In the context of the minister's statement that Chagaramas is open to everyone and you're trying to open it up to everyone and so on. Why have you abandoned the water taxi terminal at Chagaramas? 031. Why have you abandoned it?
We haven't abandoned.
No.
But it's gone, it's disappeared. So it must be abandoned.
Yes, Honourable Minister, could you?
Why is it 0 now?
It's just that they have other priorities right now.
All right.
Yeah,
That's it.
It's a question of priorities and the utilization
No,
of
but
the space.
that is not an answer.
I just,
Yeah,
It
please.
was there, it's gone.
Please, let us have order. The minister is going to answer, please.
it's a question of what do you prioritize? What do you spend money on? There's nothing that prevents the water taxi from docking in Chagaramas and having the people.
There's no
The
berthing
water taxi
facility.
moves. The water taxi moves from here to Chagaramas.
Not
It
efficiently.
goes there every
But
weekend.
not efficiently.
No, I don't see how you can say
All
that.
right,
It
say
does.
that.
All right, okay. I think
So it's a low priority
I
matter.
recognize Aruka Maloney,
to Chagaramas.
and then after
Low
point
priority.
40. Aruka
Understand.
Maloney, please. Aruka Maloney.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sub-item 029.
Yes.
With respect to phase 2 of the boardwalk, I would like to find out exactly what is the total cost of that boardwalk. and
No,
when-
that was answered already, I think, and you will supply the answers to that. I recognize the member for point 410.
Just a further question on the Chagaramas plan and one other question.
Yes.
With regard to the further question, to the plan, was it included?
Please, let us have order, please.
With regard to the Chagaramas plan, Minister,
Yes, order, please. I'm trying to hear what point 410 is saying, please.
was it
Member.
included then, the sale of Pier 2? And if that did occur, what did it include
it
that?
was not,
Or did it occur?
Right,
It didn't occur. It's my
No, it didn't
Yeah,
occur.
no.
All right.
I will say.
question, but I do have one.
Yeah,
I
yes.
want to say that under this watch, nobody can walk into Chagaramas and buy anything just so.
All right,
Right,
I think you
okay.
answered.
Right.
Final question.
Yes, no,
Final question. Yes,
Okay, thank you. Questions, shall I?
Yes, you go ahead.
Under
You have the
069, you made an appropriation in 2014 for the eighth America's competitiveness, and your appropriation was $6 million.
Yes.
That figure jumped to $31 million. Is it that you didn't contemplate a conference in 2014 and you made no such appropriation?
No,
Or were there cost overruns, huge cost overruns?
All right,
What
I
is
think-
this about?
Let them answer.
Nothing of
Honourable
the
Minister.
kind. A conference like this takes a long time to plan and organize. The first thing is internationally you must get support for the conference. So that is done like 2 years in advance, okay? Once that was done, what we had to do was to begin the preliminary preparations, including beginning the process of establishing a secretariat. The thing takes place in 2014. That is when most of your expenditure is going to take place, because you have to conduct the thing in a certain way. It is international in scope. You are bringing people from all over the world, and you want to make sure that it's run properly. So the secretariat expands, which means that contract workers for a limited time, and I want to say that they've only been given 11 months contract. I think they were hired for it. So this would have covered their salaries, and we'll cover it until the end of possibly November. The conference is in October. And of course, the expenditures that you have to incur, which is that you have to hire the Hyatt, you have to deal with transportation when they are here,
But you obviously didn't appropriate properly.
No, it's
You
not
must
that.
have
You don't
known.
appropriate all in one year.
Okay.
All right, okay, I think that question, the last question is coming from the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Yes, please, let the Leader of the Opposition have the last say.
Mr. Chairman,
Go forward.
I'd like to go to 032. The
032.
The rehabilitation of Guave Road, for which a provision of $20 million is being made. And this, Mr. Chairman, comes on the heels of in 2014. Now, Guave Road exists, it's overgrown by bush, and it needs a few drains cleaned. There is the Guave Road in Chagaramas.
We're going to build a railroad.
Please,
Chairman,
let's allow the member
I am
to
not
make.
one of those who laugh at tens of millions of dollars in this country. There seems to be an attitude in allocation that tens of millions and how much. Guave Road exists. It's overgrown and it needs clearing of the drains and being paved. I see here rehabilitation of Guave Road. That item was on the budget in 2014 with an estimate for $3.5 million. They spent $500,000. I would like to ask the minister, what was that $500,000 spent on? Because the road has not been touched. But now, for the same assignment, rehabilitation of the existing Guave Road, I see a request for $20 million. So I want to ask the minister, how does the scope of work change from 2014 to 2015 to cause the estimate of the rehabilitation of Guave Road to move from 3.5 million to 20 million?
The Honourable Minister.
No, the 3 point, I mean, you can't build anything all at once, okay? This $3.5 million was for collaboration between the Ministry of Works and the CDA, basically designing what was to be the road, the scope of the works, etc. It is $3.5 million. The actual cost, because I think a contract has been awarded, is $34 million is what the road is going to cost.
To rehabilitate the existing road?
It's going to be rehabilitation and addition. The road is a narrow road. I've gone through the road myself. You're right, it is overrun by bushes, but it is an extremely narrow road. The road itself will have to be resurfaced. You'd have to build a wider road. You would have to make provision as you build a road in relation to the other things that you want to do on the sides of the road.
Has a contract been awarded for this?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, I think CDA indicated.
How was that contractor selected?
The normal process. I think that there were there was an advertisement, there were a number of bids. Ultimately, the board would have had a committee, that's to say a tenders committee, look at it, evaluation, and every single thing that is done by any of the institutions under my charge, every board minute and every tender document comes back to the permanent secretary.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask the minister to provide this committee with all the details surrounding the request for that contract and the documentation surrounding the award of that contract for the rehabilitation of Guave Road?
Right.
Yes.
All right, we are moving on finally. Honourable members, the question is that a sum of $307,219,830 for Head 67, the Ministry of Planning and Sustainable Development, stand part of the schedule.
Mr. Chairman, before we go to the vote, I know you want to run on, but we have some valid questions still, 2 more, and I crave your indulgence to ask them.
Which one is that you want to go to?
I am on page 182, item 021. No question was asked about that. And I wanted to put a question to the minister on that. Establishment of a high-level panel of experts, which we have spent $9 million on. I would like to ask the minister.
And which is the second one?
The second one has to do with the innovation financing facility, for which a request is made for $19 million. And I would like to find out what is that $19 million for?
Yes,
with respect to 2014.
Yeah, I'll deal with
you can do it quickly first.
Second one first. Since we established, this government established under the Ministry of Planning and Sustainable Development and executed by the Council for Competitiveness and Innovation, an innovation fund of $10 million. In 2012, in 2011, not one penny of that fund was spent because we did not get our innovation idea off the ground. In 2012, 400 applicants applied to what is known as the Idea to Innovation Program, 400 plus, and 50 awards were made out of the Innovation Fund. In 2013, close to 500 people applied, 53 awards were made out of the Innovation Fund. And in 2014, we just awarded 44, I think, out of 500 people who submitted on merit. And these